What's going on, guys? K-Pine here and welcome back. And in this video I'll be featuring Scrafty in the Great League Remix. Scrafty is one of those Pokemon that, just like Obstagoon, has a good ability to core break opponents when placed on the lead. However, it's just a little bit less flexible than its dark and normal type counterpart when placed in that position. But what Scrafty does have that Goon doesn't is a fantastic closing ability. And that's why I placed it in the back along with double on the safe swap to bait out any flyers or opposing fighters that Scrafty doesn't want to see. Now, I did pair those two up with a Haxorus Lead, but another strong option would be Frostlass. It just depends on whether or not you want extra fighter coverage in the Coffin or extra flyer coverage in Frost. And with that, let's get right into the battles. Alright, getting to the first battle, we lead Haxorus into Shadow Quagsire. My opponent's going to instantly swap into a Pidgeot, and it takes me a little while, but I eventually swap into my double. I was thinking that, hey, they're swapping a Pidgeot right here. They're probably going to have a knockdown in the back if they're safe swapping the Pidgeot. So do I want to save my double for later? But double is really kind of my only answer to this Pidgeot. So in reality, I should have swapped it in instantly. Should not have let the Pidgeot get this much of a lead. But Pidgeots love to bait, so we called the double feather dance from them, and now we're just going to be able to spam off these moves. First body slam lands, and next body slam's not going to be able to KO, but a payback might just be able to. And I'm hoping that this might slip right past, but they commit a shield. And now I'm actually going to save my double for later and hard swap back in my Kofa. Again, my Kofa, hard locked in. People love their debuffs. I call the feather dance, and it's another feather dance. Now they're going to bring back in their Quagsire, so perhaps it isn't the knockdown in the back. But which would be great for me if it's not. And my opponent does go for the Stone Edge. The Coffin's just able to hang on, get to another Shadow Ball. This is debuffed, but we're still able to farm down and get switch advantage. Back in comes the Pidgeot. It is able to get another wing attack's worth of energy, but now I'm gonna bring back in my Scrafty, and my counting was off by one. On one more later, I was gonna swap into my double to make a catch, but it was off by one, so I end up having to give up a shield there, and now I'm up against a Shadow Charizard. This can be a very tough end game as two things need to go right. One, we get the power up punch bait, and the second one is correctly call the Dragon Claw or the Blast Burn. We're low, we have a shield, I'm gonna call the Dragon Claw. It is the Dragon Claw, so now we can get off this foul play, take out the Shadow Charizard, and that Pidgeot is very low. So one more counter does it, and Scrafty's able to close strong in a good game. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Haxorus into Haxorus. This is a pretty good lead for us, especially if they are not on a Night Slash. My opponent's going to save swap into a Jellicent, and really I could have swapped into either my double or my Scrafty here, as they both have a good ability to wall the hexes from the jelly and tank the surfs. One foul play is just not enough to KO, but a second one will. You can see if my opponent wants to give up a shield here or just let their jelly go. They let their jelly go and decide to get some farm on their Haxorus instead. I'm not going to reach another foul play, so I'm going to go for this power up punch right away, just so I can get one more boosted counter's worth of damage on the Haxorus. Now this Haxorus is loaded, and they go for the break and swipe right away to lower my attack. And now here, this could potentially be the Night Slash, so I do respect it just in case it is, but it's another break and swipe as my opponent swaps into a Confusion Wormadam. Here, I go for the Dark Pulse. I should have just gone for the Shadow Ball, as I am double debuffed, and our opponent's not going to want to shield a double debuff move. But you know, my thinking was, this is their last Pokemon. They have two shields. They're going to want to save HP and expend the shields here. But I was wrong, as it ends up being a bulky Pokemon like Wormadam. So nice call, my opponent. And I'm going to bring in my double and just go straight body slams here, making sure to build up to these paybacks to threaten a shield from my opponent. And I can just spam out body slams at this point, as the double kick and body slam combination will be enough to take out this Wormadam. Wormadam's low, back in comes the Haxorus. I'm going to throw this body slam right away, get the Haxorus on out of there, don't want to take any more counter damage, and now we can just double kick down the Wormadam for the win. GG's. Next battle, we lead Coffin into Shadow Machamp. It's a fantastic lead. You can see what my opponent wants to do, and they're going to swap into a Tentacruel. I don't have a great answer for a Tentacruel safe swap, so instead I'm going to throw the Shadow Ball and then dip into my double. Shadow Ball does get a shield, but because they got a shield, I'm going to stay in, force them to waste some energy first, and now I'm going to swap into my double, where I will be able to outpace to this body slam. Body slam is able to land, and now my opponent is going to be firing off another Scald here. I will give up a shield because I don't want my opponent to potentially shield themselves and then be able to poison jab down to take switch to then align their Machamp against my Scrafty. So I overfarm as much as possible, fire off that body slam to take out the Tentacruel, and now I'm only one more double kick away from the next body slam for the Machamp. My opponent lets it go, and now here I'm going to wait my full timer because I did stay in for a little bit. Our clocks are a little bit desynced. And now I bring in my Coffin. I try to swap into my Scrafty right there, if you'll notice, to catch the Rock Slide, but I got the one turn bring in not allowing me to swap, and it ends up actually working in my favor as they ended up going for the cross chop anyways. So cross chop, not enough to take out my Coffin, and I throw that Shadow Ball, which gets their final shield, but unfortunately for me, their whole team ended up being good against my entire back line. So the Coffin itself was gonna have to carry this game, and it's already very low on HP. So I let that Sludge Wave go, fire off this Foul Play, which is gonna bring their Toxapex into the red. And now from here, I have my shield to try and Shadow Claw down and get to a one last move to take out the Machamp. It's going to be very close. Am I going to be able to Shadow Claw down in time? I am not. The opponent has the back-to-back brine, as the second one takes out my Coffin for a good game. GG's to my opponent. Well played. Next battle, we lead Cofagrigus into Vigoroth. Pretty neutral matchup, as we're both dealing double resisted fast moves to each other. And two Dark Pulses aren't quite enough to take out the Vig, while they have to throw Bulldoze, which we all know is not a good move by now. So first Dark Pulse lands, and I'm going to load up energy, tank this Bulldoze, and throw this next Dark Pulse as soon as I get it, because I want to bring their Vigoroth into a manageable range for my double, which I'm going to safe swap into, as well as save my Coffin just in case my double safe swap lures out an actual fighter from my opponent. That's not the pseudo fighter in the Vig. So down goes the Vig, and in comes a Clefable, and this is perfect. This is where we want to see it, as our Scrafty would most definitely not appreciate coming up against a Clefable. But now, since they're bringing in the Clefable here, I just have to hope it's not double fairy in the back, and this is just their only fairy type that they have. We're just barely able to survive that Meteor Mash, get their first shield with that Body Slam, so now I can bring in my Coffin here. I will double shield my Coffin in this scenario, because I need to get as much Shadow Claw damage off as possible. But my opponent ends up swapping out after they throw that move into a Cresselia. So again, Coffin's going to put into a lot of work as we land that Shadow Ball. And I swap out then because I don't want to use my last shield on the Coffin yet. I want to save that last shield for the Clefable. And since my Scrafty has a terrible matchup against Clefable, I'm going to bring it in here against the Cress, where it has the most play left in this match. So back in comes the Clefable. I'm going for this Foul Play. Again, we're looking to get as much damage off as we can. Foul Play lands, and now from here, we're able to just counter down in time. GG's to my opponent. Alright, getting to the next battle, we lead Quagsire into Lickitung. Terrible lead, and we do have two answers for this in the back. So we're going to swap right away into our double, and we bait out the Mantine. Now, a little bit of a misplay right here. Should have thrown my Body Slam right away before their Bubble Beam debuff, but I was just so focused on throwing on good timing that it ended up actually hurting me a little bit there. Which is why we're going to make up for it. We go for this first Body Slam, and we go for the payback here. The harder hitting move, want to get off as much damage as possible before that next Bubble Beam, potential Bubble Beam debuff. So we're going to let this next move go, just in case it is the Bubble Beam, and it actually ends up being an Aerial Ace. So my opponent is running Bubble Beam Aerial Ace instead of Bubble Beam Ice Beam. Good to know, since Aerial Ace is one less wing attack than Ice Beam. Go for the Body Slam, just not enough to KO, but switch advantage is extremely important for us here. So we are going to commit a shield, double kick down, and in comes a Galarian Weezing. So it turns out that switch advantage ended up being even more important than I thought it was, as first Body Slam's able to land, second Body Slam able to land as well, as we do get to it before we are Fairy Winded down. And now here I'm going to bring in my Coffin. My Coffin is tanky enough where it can survive two Brutal Swings, as it does just below half health. But I do have my Scrafty in the back, so I need to be careful here. And since I let that second Brutal Swing go, I say swap right in my Scrafty right away, expecting them to, try and snipe with their Lickitung against my Coffin. But they end up staying in, and now it's going to be even a little more tricky, as I do have to give up my final shield to the Play Rough right there. But the good news is we are able to get the counter down in time. So now we are just going to ramp up our fast move damage against this Lickitung. We have zero shields, they have 2, and they are going to commit a shield to the first power-up punch. Are they going to want to commit their shield to the second one or the potential third? No, they let this one go, but they are not. But because of that ramped up damage, there is not going to be a third power-up punch. As we survive the first Body Slam, swap at the second one, make the catch, and now Scrafty is going to be able to finish off this game as 1-2 more counters take out the Lickitung. GG's. Next battle, we lead Coffin into Charizard. Little bit of a tricky lead here, as we all know the Dragon Claw Blast Burn bait game, and you never want to come out on the wrong side of that game. So we're going to go for the Dark Pulse here. Dark Pulse does get the shield. It is a very safe bait, as Charizards like to shield, and now this allows us to get to our next Dark Pulse on one less Shadow Claw, but we're not going to reach it, as we decide to call the bait, and they're able to land the Blast Burn. So my Coffin just gets absolutely deleted. Now in comes my double. We do correctly shield the next Blast Burn, and we're going to throw one more double kick and then Body Slam for good timing, and my opponent ends up catching it on their Quagsire. So what we're going to do is we're going to farm back up. We're going to store that Body Slam for later, as we need that Body Slam to take out the Charizard. And we're going to let our Scrafty take as much damage here as possible, just so their Zard gets less farm, less wing attack farm, less energy. So my double will have a better time, an easier time at dealing with it, I should say. So they go for the power punch right there at the end, but they end up having a Toxicroak in the back. So despite trying to give us a little bit as much of an advantage as possible, this one is not going to go our way, as the Toxie is able to counter us down, and my opponent takes that one. GG's. Next battle, we lead Quagsire into Quagsire. So this one we're going to stay in, and we're going to go for our Shadow Ball. I overfarm a little bit, making sure they're not going to swap out to try and catch onto something, and they go straight for the Stone Edge. So now I need to be careful. I throw one more Shadow Claw and then my next Shadow Ball, and now I'm going to save swap into my double. Again, we want to keep my Coffin around, just in case they do have a fighter lurking behind this Quagsire. So So first Mud Bomb lands, and we end up baiting out the Flyer. So this works just as well as it being a fighter in the back, as we go straight for the payback, not expecting my opponent to shield, considering they're already down 2 shields to 1. So payback lands, we survive that Poison Fang, get off this next Body Slam, and my opponent ends up deciding to use their final shield right there. So now I'm gonna bring in my Coffin. And I have a little bit of a bait call right here. I have 2 shields. They have the potential to bait, but I also don't want to let a Golbat with that much HP left, Shadow Golbat, go up against my Scrafty. So I do commit the shield. Ends up being that Poison Fang bait. Down goes my Coffin, and now back in comes my Scrafty with a lot of work to do. So now here, I load up on energy. I play to this CMP tie that we end up losing. So this is going to be very, very costly for me, depending on what they have in the back. Scrafty versus a Quagsire is an IV dependent CMP tie, but in this situation, it ended up not going our way. So we do undercharge just to get a little bit more farm. And my opponent has a Jellicent in the back. So if we don't CMP tie right there, we are in a fantastic position to close out this game. But because of that extra damage we took from the Mud Bomb, this is now going to be a tricky and very, very close end game. So I'm going to throw my Foul Play right away. Want to get my Scrafty keep my Scrafty as healthy as possible as it takes out the Jelly. Back in comes the Shadow Golbat, and we simul KO each other. Very close one right there. GG's. Next battle, we lead Coffin into another Quagsire Lead, so a chance at redemption in this matchup. So like last time, we're going to stay in, and we're going to fire off the Shadow Ball at my opponent's Quag. See if they want to give up their first shield here or let it go. They let it go, and their Quagsire is now in the red. So just like last time, we're going to tank this move as it is another Stone Edge and swap into our own double. Double is going to have to take the double Mud Bomb from this Quag, but we are able to commit to a double kick down in return if our opponent lets us. Double Mud Bomb lands, and they don't let us, and swap into a Dugong. So we're going to build up, fire off this Body Slam, throw one more double kick, and CMP tie this Dugong to their Icy Wind. Icy Wind is going to take us out, be more than enough to take us out from this range. But most importantly, playing to the CMP tie right there allows us to keep them from over farming against our double, giving us the perfect counter down against their Dugong. See what they have in the back, and it's a Shadow Charizard. And now I have this game won. All I need to do is go straight Foul Play, save a shield for my Coffin, and I have this match closed out. But these battles are late at night. I go for my lose condition, which is my opponent calling a Power Up Punch, and now this is going to be very close. So we're all in at this point. We're going straight Power Up Punch. We're ramping our counter damage up as much as possible to get rid of this Shadow Charizard. Scrafty able to get the Shadow Charizard in a manageable health range, where as long as we don't get denied, which we don't, that Shadow Claw will take out the Charizard, and we take out the Quagsire as well. GG's to my opponent. Very close one there. Next battle, we lead Coffin into Toxicroak. This is a dream lead as well. They swap into a Quick Attack Diggersby. And the thing about a Quick Attack Diggersby is that we can't Power Up Punch all the way down. We have to throw a Power Up Punch and then a Foul Play, as an Earthquake and a Fire Punch is going to be enough to take out my Scrafty. So we are going to fire off this Foul Play to ensure we keep switch without having to go down a shield. And now my opponent is going to bring back in that Toxicroak and counter down my Scrafty. where I will now immediately bring in my Coffin as the switch timers are not up and I want to get as much energy and damage off as possible. And now they have a Lickitung in the back. So despite them being able to bait out my Scrafty with the Diggersby, we have a second fighter, pseudo fighter, if that's what you want to call it, in our double to lock down this Lickitung, as we can just spam out body slams after body slams and just match shields with our opponent. So that body slam does get the shield. So here I can actually let this next one go, as it's not going to threaten the KO, and now fire off this next body slam. Also, the switch clocks aren't up, so I don't need to worry about the Toxicroak just yet. Now it comes up, but my double is in a health range where it can survive that counter, and my Coffin can just close out this match against the Lickitung. 2 shields to none. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Cofagrigus into a Alolan Sandslah. 2 better answers in the back, so we're going to safe swap into our double, and we're able to bait out a Jump Bluff. And now this is great, as Jump Bluff is one of Scrafty's worst nightmares. So we're going to let this first move go. They are able to land the acrobatics, and now we're just going to make sure we throw in good timing here. It allows us to maximize our fast move to charge move energy gain here, and potentially get to another body slam that we wouldn't otherwise. So 1 double kick and then our body slam, as this third one does land, brings the Jump Bluff into the red. And now I can make a play for switch here, as my opponent CMP ties my double. If they give up a shield, I'll just match shields back, as I will be able to outpace to their next move. And my opponent, recognizing that, lets their Jump Bluff go down and brings in a Gliscor to get an energy advantage. So again, very, very important here for us that we were able to get switch advantage. And now, since my Scrafty is lined up against that Alolan Sandslah, I don't need shields. My Scrafty does not need shields against that Alolan Sandslah, as I can just counter all the way down with those double super effective counters. So I'm going to invest my shields here in my Coffin to get as much Shadow Claw damage off as possible. See, I could have survived that second Night Slash, but again, this Shadow Claw damage is imperative, as it puts their Gliscor deep into the red, which now allows it to be at a very manageable health range for my Scrafty. They're not going to be able to reach an Earthquake. They're not even going to be able to reach a Night Slash despite that boost. And now my Scrafty just counters down their Alolan Sandslah for a good game. GG's to my opponent. Scrafty is a very strong Pokemon in general, but doesn't see much play in the Open Great League as it probably should. So that's why, with the Great League remix being around, I had to give it a go to really see what it's capable of, and boy did it not disappoint. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate ya. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say, and with that, I'll catch you in the next one.